everyone, I'm Anam.
And I'm Ksenia.
And This Wasn't in the Manual.
On this podcast, we talk about the stories behind the success, the lessons no one hands you.
And today's guest is a builder in every sense of the word. We're joined by Sarah Huverdeen, Director of Marketing at Stake Company. When she joined the company, it had 200 million dirhams in investment. Now it's crossed the billion dirhams mark.
She's also the founder and host of She Builds, where she interviews powerhouse women creating things on their own terms.
In this episode, we dive into investing, fintech, startup chaos, and how sometimes the best teacher is simply just starting.
Okay, let's get into it. Sarah, thank you for coming to our podcast. And take us, please, back before Stake, before She Builds, before Dubai. Where are you from and what did you do?
So I'm from a very small town in England called Norfolk, countryside, not much going on. Grew up there, went to university to study international business between the UK and the US. I graduated, and after having time in the US, I just wanted to be abroad. Like, I was adamant to get myself out of the UK for no other reason other than the fact that I just thought it's always going to be there. Home's always going to be there. I'm lucky I have a British passport, and I just felt like I'm a true Sagittarius. I love to travel and I wanted to get out and see the world. So I sat in my third year of university applying to every single job in New York to get myself back to America. Who's going to hire a college kid with absolutely no experience? I soon figured out. But I did a lot of volunteering with the careers department at university. And one of the ladies on the board sent me a role, which was an international finance role, and gave me the opportunity to come to Dubai. So I got the choice after that program to do Dubai, Hong Kong, or New York. I went into it to get New York, but soon realised after spending a few months training for that, might be nice to do something different. And I asked my boss at the time, where should I go? And he said, I think you should go to Dubai. I think Dubai would be a really good place for you. I think you've got the energy of Dubai. 2 weeks later, I was on a flight.
Oh, wow.
How old were you?
Yeah,
21. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I know. I was a baby, 21 years old. And people say, oh, that's so brave to move to Dubai at 21. And it is. But I also think you're so naive when you're that young that you just think, well, what's the worst that happens?
And it's interesting that somebody suggested Dubai to you, because I think till date, a lot of people have so much misconception around it. But 10 years ago, Dubai was great. You know, it was still great. It was like popping. There were a lot of things happening. It's amazing. Well, kudos to your mentor. Whoever that was.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank them for that. I think as well, Dubai 20 years ago now was an incredibly different place.
Yeah.
But I even think back 10 years, and I remember when I first moved and people would say they'd been here for 10 years. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, that's incredible. I'll be 2-3 years and I'll be out.
Yeah.
We all come with a 2-year plan and we end up saying a decade.
Everyone. So I grew up in Dubai, and everyone's come through and said, 3-4 years, everyone's exit plan goes to garbage.
Yeah, it's too good here.
But that's interesting. How did you decide to move to Dubai? I mean, did you do your research? Did you check some websites? Did you check anything about Dubai?
Yes, I had one mutual friend that lived out here, acquaintance maybe, if he's watching this, friend. And I'd seen his Facebook post, and I'd seen him on boats on weekends, and I'd seen some of the girls on boats wearing bikinis, because the initial thing is you think, what's it going to be like? What can I wear? And my dad had worked out here a little bit, to and from, before probably 2008, 2009, he was out here. So I think I got a bit of an idea that okay, it's not maybe what the media makes out Dubai, and it's a place where I can come and build my career. And I honestly just went on a bit of a whim. I think my parents they're pretty open-minded, obviously cautious, but I think because my dad had already had a foot into Dubai, he knew what was on offer. And again, I think I just went in with the mentality of I'll figure it out, and if it works out, it works out, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And now I think, gosh, 10 years later, it's worked out.
That's amazing. I love
That's
that.
very interesting. Yeah. And now let's talk about your career. So now you're working at Stake. Have you always imagined yourself in fintech or proptech, or did it just happen?
Yes, I very early on in my 20s wanted tech. Tech was something I always wanted, just interested me. When I did my internships in America, I'd visit the Google campus, and I just thought it was really cool. And I don't know, I just always wanted to be in the tech space. I find technology incredibly interesting. And I knew, again, 10 years ago that there was going to be so much in the startup in the tech space. So I think early on, I knew I wanted that. I just found myself falling into prop tech. And I think that as Dubai has grown, the real estate market has grown. My place within real estate happened to be marketing. And I went from more of the larger scale, the Beirut to Bizzle. And then I just found myself really learning through those roles, building out new business lines for them. I love to build, like I'm a builder. I love to build through and through. And that's how I then found myself in the startup space. I love figuring it out. Like I really enjoy that process of discovery. And I think it's really difficult in your 20s trying to figure out what you want because the corporate and the money is so easy to distract you.
Oh, tempting,
and
yeah.
I got so many beautiful, tempting offers in that space in my 20s. But there was just something inside of me. I just knew, like, I just loved that element. It's only recently that I've really like identified myself as like a builder, but I feel like that summarizes like what I enjoy really well. So then when Stake came along, Stake was an incredibly interesting business model in itself. And the opportunity to go in, be one of the early employees and build out is no matter what industry you're in, it's high growth. And I remember applying for jobs and everything would say high growth experience. I was like, how do I get the experience? And I got it. So yeah.
When did you join them?
So I joined Stake over 2 years ago now. I actually had 2 years at another proptech startup before, and I learned what not to do. And then Stake has given me the opportunity to learn what to do. And I think sometimes we're really easy to say what you learned somewhere, but I genuinely think the experiences that I had at my previous startup taught me a huge amount of also like what not to do, from product market fit to is the industry ready for what you're bringing to market? Is the product worth people's time? What's the team like that you're working with? What are the backers like? What do they want to know? And I think like that gave me all of the insights to join Stake and understand, is this a sound business model? I remember my interview with Rami. Half of it, I had my notepad with about 25 questions on, and I just went through interviewing him on all of the questions that I had because I just learned everything to look out for, everything I wanted to know. And I grilled the business model through and through to like fully understand what I was getting myself in for. And I mean, hey, it's worked out, right? Like again, I think there's an element of startups of like catching the wave at the right time. And I think a lot of startups have phenomenal business models, but they're too early or they're too late. And I think Stake had a fantastic business model that just hit the wave at the perfect time.
That's amazing.
I just love at such a young age you were able to identify that while asking all of these questions in your interview. And I think it's incredible that, I don't know, that just
exactly.
sounds like somebody who's built for this. I mean, that's amazing. Even though I understand you started at 21, but I think a lot of people started quite early. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations, but that's actually really impressive that you were able to identify what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
I'm very curious minded. And I think I've always just seeked out like good mentors, good bosses that I can just be a sponge from. Like I've definitely really tended to follow, like in my 20s especially, maybe not so much now, but in my 20s I was like, who am I working for? It was very much about what's the mind that I'm working under. And I think what's different maybe about my profile is, yes, I'm marketing, but a lot of my 20s I spent under ex-consultants, business generalists. So I think that taught me a really broad view on like business and how to assess business. And I think that gave me like high business acumen. And then as I've like only recently really got into the depths of marketing and understanding marketing principles, like it's quite nice to couple those things together. And I think that's typically quite rare. So I think maybe unconventional early on, but it's serving me well now.
Yeah. Do you remember any questions you asked when you were interviewing at Stake? Because I'm asking because, I mean, most of the people, they don't usually know what to ask when they decide to change the company. And I guess it's easier when you go to work for corporate company because like stability, it's the same, yes. But sometimes you want to change your career and you want to go to work for a startup because it might be more dynamic, it might be more interesting, but at the same time, it has some risks. So how did you go about this?
So my top questions I would ask a startup. Number one, who are your backers? What's your fundraising plan looking like? What's your path to profitability? What is your reliance on other people, i.e., do you need government infrastructure to make your business model work? What do you value most in the product you're building? Where do you see the business in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, because I think a lot of founders can tell you 6 months and 12 months, but they do not know the 2-year vision. And you need 2-year vision early on. The minute you get to Series A, B, you need your 5-year vision. So I think they would be my key, and competitors, and why you're better than competitors and why you think you've got space to play. I think typically in most markets, you get 1 to 2 key players that dominate a certain category. And if there's a business coming in looking to challenge that, most of the time you need really deep really deep pockets, or you need a fantastic business model that really challenges the status quo.
That's so unique. And the reason why Sanya and I are a bit fascinated by this, even these questions, first of all, they're like incredible. These are such valuable notes that you've given us. But I think a lot of people wouldn't even know what that means, you know, to think about, do you have backers? Do you have this? I think the first thing they go like, what's the pay and what's the package?
Oh, it's always like pay, package like, what are you doing? But
because
like,
that is short term as well, right?
Yeah.
There's like short sighted. So it's incredible that some people are built like that. They're like for like long vision oriented. I don't know what the right term is.
I think as well, if you're looking for like development and growth, you've got to be in a business that's growing.
Yeah.
You know, I think like, and positioning yourself in that business is important. So I think a lot of people think, is the pay good? Is this job good? But they're not thinking like, how do I want to grow and what do I want to get out of it? Because look, I'll be honest, startups aren't perfect. Like startups can be really challenging. And you've got to know like what you're getting out of this. What's the experience I'm taking off? What do I need to get under my belt in this experience? And I think you can only do that with a business that has a sound business model. If there is not a sound business model and they're offering you a nice job, you can be out of your job in 6 months' time. You've got to be able to identify the startups that are worth the punt and the startups that aren't. And especially in Dubai, there's startups coming out of our ears and there's people selling the dream. But you've got to learn to like ask the critical questions. When I took Stake, I asked to interview the leadership team, and I asked to meet 3 other people before I took the job, and I'd ask them all the question I wanted to ask about their product line. Who am I working with? Who's sitting around the leadership table? And I think those are the depths you need to go to like assess, is it a good business model?
100%. And I think the questions that you asked at Stake as well, it helped that you had the property experience, because if someone were to not have that and go into prop tech, because I'm going to be honest, when I met you the first time, you said prop tech. I'm like, what is prop tech? Like, what is she saying? And then I'm like, oh my God, does she mean property tech? I didn't even know that term existed.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was so confused. I was like, okay, another English word I don't know.
Gosh, marketing 101, I should know that not everyone knows what I mean.
That is so funny. I'm like, what is she saying? Prop tech. So that's that makes sense. And I think because of your interest in AI and because of your experience in property, you were able to dissect things further. But I'm interested, I understand you were always curious, but do you read, do you listen, do you read certain books? Do you have people that like you constantly seek advice from? Do you have mentors that guide you through till date?
Yeah, books, I love to read, fiction, non-fiction. I can get lost in books. Recently, though, I've kind of felt like maybe I've been reading the wrong books, I've been a bit stagnant. So podcasts have been phenomenal. There's a podcast I absolutely love. I'm obsessed with it. I never miss an episode. It's called Marketing Against the Grain. And it's a podcast that is ran by the top marketeers at HubSpot. And they are so AI first. They've totally pivoted their entire business model to adapt to the new world we're living in. And I'm obsessed with their content. It's so actionable. So like podcast space I love, but sometimes it can be generic. You can just enjoy it. But I love actionable. Like what you do is actionable. I love actionable content. And then mentors. Yes, I've been very fortunate. I've got some phenomenal mentors. And I think mentorship is a funny word. I think a lot of people don't know what mentorship is, and they think it should be a rigid thing where your mentor should meet you every month. And like, I was very fortunate as I seeked out really good managers and bosses. They have then ended up becoming mentors. And I think they open doors for you that you couldn't imagine. You follow the right people and they will give you the opportunities, hands down.
100%. And I think it's not just about opening up opportunities. I feel like the state of mind you've come to has come through conversations, through reading, through listening, through being in rooms where you don't know anything. And I think that's how you expand your mind. You know, we all grow up with the same, almost the same brain. But like, I feel like to really enrich it, you need to put yourself in positions you've never been before, or like read something or listen to something. That's the only way you'll be able to ask the questions that you were able to ask. But obviously, that's why this podcast exists, because this really wasn't in the manual. So yeah, I love this so much. And I love how much you achieved in such a young age. And I think it's incredible. I hope you're proud of yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to learn to pat myself on the back a little bit more.
Amazing.
One thing I think as well with mentors that I've really started to maybe shift a little bit is I would validate everything off mentors because they're people I hold in such high regard. But there's something a friend said to me recently, and they said, any big life decision, you go inward because you know the answer in yourself. You don't go outward. You sit, you journal, you really figure out what you want to do. And I think sometimes mentors is an easy way out of that. And if you have really great mentors around you, it's easy just to go to them and ask for them for advice. What should I do? What do you think? I'm an information gatherer. Give me all the information. Let me understand everything you think about this. You think about this. This opinion is conflicting to this one, but I've got everyone's opinions. Now I can make my decision.
100%.
But you reach a point, maybe it's confidence, maybe it's validation of like, no, I know what I'm doing and I have the ability to like make my own decision. But I've definitely learned recently, you have to go inward to like make the right decision for you because you know the answer at the end of the day. You just have to like trust yourself.
Do you think you would have been able to do that when you were 21? Or do you think it took you some time? Yeah, it takes some time, I feel like. And I like what you said about people think mentorship is such a rigid process because it's not. Like today, I remember when I graduated, I was working and I was doing my degree, and I wanted to credit everyone who was part of my journey, even the guy who hired me. So I remember when I got my degree, I sent him a message. I'm like, thanks to you, I have this now, you know? So I consider him part of my journey, and I think they're my mentors. And like last year, I met some incredible people who I call my friends, but I also consider them mentors because they're much more experienced. They know what they're doing. I take their advice into account, but like you said, now I'm at a point in my life where I can look inwards. But I think before, I don't think I had enough. I don't know if it's confidence or like autonomy in my, like, you know, just.
I think it's confidence.
It's
and
probably
experience,
confidence and experience. Yeah.
Like I looked. It took me a long time. Like my parents, I adore my parents. They are the most amazing people on the planet. I love them so much. But for so many years, I would go to them not just to seek validation, but I'd go to my parents for opinion on job moves and what I should do. And it took one of my mentors to say to me, "They're not on your board of advisors. They're your cheerleaders at the side. Your parents are your cheerleaders," because God bless them. My almost 70-year-old parents, my mum's not really had much of a career, but she's done an amazing job raising us as children. My dad's had a phenomenal career, but he's also like 30, 40 years ahead of me. The
100%.
world is a different place. The way the world works, his career is so different to mine that like, yes, you can go to your parents for like understanding and getting their opinion and getting their feedback, but like, are they the right people to help you make that decision? And that's taken me a long time to get to the point where I say to my parents, by the way, this happened, rather than what should I do?
Yeah. I think as children, we seek that kind of validation from our family. So we say, oh, can you be part of my journey as well? But I agree with you. And I did that as well. I mean, I'm relating to you so hard right now because I feel like I did that early on. But I realized that my family is a family of bankers. They don't know anything about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They will never understand that.
It's a different world.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah.
So I love that for us. So let's segue into real estate and tokenization and owning property and rewriting the access. So from your recent experience, what do proptech apps do? And how does tokenized real estate actually work?
Cool. So PropTech is essentially property technology. How do you combine real estate, asset class with technology? Fractional ownership is kind of the umbrella term and tokenization sits under it. So I think for a lot of people when they're listening, they hear property and technology, Rightmove in the UK. Do they think about Zoopla? Do they think about Debizzle? Do they think about Bayou? You know, they think about, okay, real estate on a website. But ultimately, there's so much more that can go deeper. Think about the real estate transaction, right? The real estate transaction is incredibly manual, incredibly offline. How people do real estate, how you do property management, how you look after that, it's a very labor intensive and operational process. How do you introduce technology to make that more efficient and more streamlined? And sometimes that doesn't mean that the groundwork goes on, but it means as a buyer, as a seller, as a landlord, how does that experience become more effortless for you? And how does technology help you on that journey? So when we think about fractional ownership and tokenization, there's different ways fractional ownership can be done. So a fractional ownership is essentially, instead of you owning a 1-bedroom in downtown Dubai to yourself, You might own 1% of that one bedroom in downtown Dubai. You own 1%, you get 1% of the rental income. There's many ways that can actually be operationalized. So one way is through fractional ownership through like an SPV structure under a company. So let's take Stake, for example.
Sorry, SPV?
Yeah, I'm going to go into that.
Okay.
So an SPV is a special purchase vehicle. An SPV is essentially a company in DIFC that you're a shareholder of. So if you were to go onto the DIFC website, you would see hundreds of SPVs. You can type in SPV and you'll see hundreds. So the way it works is one SPV owns one property. So let's say, okay, we found a 1-bedroom in downtown Dubai. You want to now list that on Stake. That 1-bedroom can be listed on Stake. That is still in the seller's name. So I'm Sarah, I own this 1-bedroom. I want to sell it. Stake can sell it for me. That goes on to Stake's app. What then happens is we crowdfund that full amount. So the term that everyone knows is crowdfunding. We crowdfund that full amount through everybody investing different pieces. Someone might put 5,000 dirham in. Someone might put 500 dirhams. Someone might put 100,000 dirham in.
1,000 dirham.
Everyone will put in a different amount into that to fund the full amount of, let's say, 1.5 million. Mm-hmm. Then what we have to do is make sure that that asset is owned by the right person, by the right group of people. The way that is done is we open a special purchase vehicle, that's a separate company in DIFC, and that is the name on the title deed. So then you have your share certificates to the SPV / the company, and then you have the title deed that says, oh, this company owns this asset. So you know what share of that company you own, that company owns that asset. The sole purpose of that SPV company is to just own that piece of real estate. What that means is there are hundreds of SPVs. So for example, take Stake's portfolio. We've got over 450 units now. Every single property has a different SPV with separate bank accounts ring-fenced. So if anything was to happen to Stake, investors' money protected. If anything was to happen to the specific property, Stake and the entire portfolio is protected. That is how it works under like a company structure.
So it's like a separate legal
entity, yes.
Legal entity for each of them.
And the difference between that and like tokenization, for example, tokenization is very new, but to an investor, it feels very similar. I'm still owning a piece of an apartment. It's the underlying technology that changes. So tokenization just means the information is stored on the blockchain. And then that is very new in this market. So the Dubai Land Department is partnered with VARA. VARA is Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, and they are doing the regulation for tokenization. The only difference there is where it is stored, and the title deed, you can see your name on a title deed specifically. There are a few other nuances that we're starting to understand more about, but that's just a different way to execute it. The fundamental concept of owning a piece of an apartment, a piece of a villa remains the same. The whole purpose of this is, I think, access. It's really hard to buy real estate. It's really expensive to buy real estate, especially in this part of the world. Like 20% down payments plus 7-8% in fees, like it really adds up, and it's very difficult for people to get onto the property ladder. This business model is starting to pop up around the world. There's some amazing use cases for it about starting to appear around the world that really just democratize access to real estate.
But where does it operate right now? Only in Dubai or?
So Stake, for example, was founded in Dubai, and it's regulated by the Dubai Financial Services Authority in the UAE. It's also regulated in Saudi by the Capital Markets Authority. So you can buy a piece of Saudi for the first time ever. You can actually buy Saudi real estate from outside of Saudi, which is very difficult to do. But there's a company in the US, for example, called Arrived Homes. It's backed by Jeff Bezos. It's a fairly new, similar stage to us. And there's a few others floating around in Europe. But it's quite interesting, right? Because I think a lot of startups in this part of the world, they say, okay, what did we do? What did they do in the West? How do we copy paste and localize it? What's interesting about Stake is there's no one to look to. There's nobody to say, how have they done it? So like when we sit around the table at strategy sessions, we're thinking, all right, where do we want to take this baby? Because there's so many possibilities when you think about the real estate ecosystem. It's not just buying and selling a property. That's a small piece. You've got whole homes. You've got rent to own. There's tenants on the other side. There's a tenant experience that could be explored. So there's a whole ecosystem of real estate that is just not digitized yet. And there's so much room to play. And there's not many players around the world that have figured it out. So it's kind of like a race to be who's first, but it's really exciting because it's pure innovation, which I think a lot of startups don't have the ability to really say.
Cool, I didn't know about that. didn't know that stake was one of its kind.
Yeah. And it's very, the hardest part as well is you're creating a category. Online real estate investing, you're creating an entire new category, which comes with its own challenges, right? Like, how do you educate people? And like I'm sitting here in front of a microphone telling you both, this is how it works. How do I deliver that message so concisely in Instagram content, through influencers, on the website, on LinkedIn, and all of these different touch points? Like, that's the hardest part, is creating a category.
Yeah, that's very cool. I was thinking while you were talking is I've always thought property was out of reach, except recently, anytime we interview someone, we have a hero question at the end where we ask, how do you invest? And I think half of them said property. I'm like, okay, interesting. So for me, as someone who feels like property is out of reach, so far in your experience, how do you think property tech apps can change that in the future?
I think it's accessibility, right? So, for example, take stake, $150 minimum investment to start investing. And I think that democratization is important for people to get access. But I think, there's a lot of misconceptions around like fees and how much you charge. And yeah, there's got to be fees, right? It's a business model. At the end of the day, it's got to make sense. But I think accessing a curated marketplace, you don't know what to buy, where to buy, what's a good unit, what's a good developer, what's a good complex for me to start investing in. That is such an ambiguous journey, and there's so much lack of transparency. Think about off-plan, how much off-plan is coming to different areas, for example, like JVC. Like, is that a good place to invest or is it not? Like, it's so difficult for you to go through that process on your own. The thing about a stake is we will maybe have 7 or 8 properties live at one time. They close in about less than 7 days, but that is curated. That is us saying we probably accept 1 unit out of every 100 we're given. That's how curated it is, because we do all the research. We figure out what the best ones with the best calculations, when we take our fees, when we want to buy it, when we think we'll sell it, what's the rental price? All of that is done for you, which I think is really hard to do on your own. So it's not just entry point, it's also like making a sound investment. And most times when people buy real estate, they buy real estate and put all their cash into 1 unit, which is really, really risky. Yeah. People drain, gosh, it drives me crazy. People get rid of their emergency savings just to put it into real estate, and they're left with nothing but an asset that's maybe not even going to be handed over for 2 years. Yeah. Whereas the business model of like fractional ownership and like the whole concept of crowdfunding, you can diversify. You can buy a bit of downtown, a bit of JVC, a bit of the marina, a bit of Saudi. Like, it gives you the ability to diversify. I'm the biggest champion for diversification. And I think what's interesting is not just entry point and access, but it's how you diversify within these real estate apps as well.
It's amazing. I have an idea. Tomorrow I'm going to buy the apartment in Marina, in GVC, in Dubai. Then I will start talking to my friends that they have multiple properties in Dubai.
It's a power play as well.
I mean, they're always too shy to ask how much did you buy it for? Just be like, I did that. I think that's cool.
You can drive past the Burj Khalifa if you want to be like, I own a bit of that.
It's interesting you said that you guys do your research before you put a listing on, because without fail, I've gotten my 3 dirhams back. Like, my 1,000 dirham investment without fail, quarterly, I always get that investment back. And I'm like, obviously it's not enough for me to like cash out, but I always wondered how this was done. So yeah, that explains it.
Question about the target audience. So anyone outside of Dubai can buy a stake, right?
Yeah. So anyone around the world can invest. So we've got investors from over 170 countries. So we've got someone sitting on their couch in Japan buying a piece of Dubai real estate.
Okay, that's amazing. Who is your like typical target audience? Because like, as you said, it's very difficult to explain it, especially when you run different digital campaigns. Of course, you cannot like deliver this whole message like very concise and everything. So how does it work? Because obviously when it's something new, especially related to finance and to stocks, people might have some fears and might have some disbeliefs. So how do you work with it? And who is usually buying these stocks? Is it people from Europe? Is it people from here? So yeah.
Great question. So it took us a while to figure this one out. I think a lot of people think like buying real estate online is like a Gen Z play. The thing is if you look at Gen Z, they are typically, and this isn't, I'm not categorizing all Gen Z, but the younger generations are used to crypto. They're used to doubling their money overnight and then crashing and losing it. Their investment habits are not quite matured, maybe quite yet. Not generalization, but for some. If you typically look at people over the age of 30, they invest in other assets, asset classes. They've got stocks, they've got bonds, they've got a few different stocks, they've got ETFs. They understand the principles of investing. That is our core target market, because I think they get it. But the thing is as we grow as a business, Stake is for everyone. We've got some of our top investors are in their 60s in Lebanon. Some of our best young investors are 21 years old in the UK. So we have got anomalies, but when you really think about people that just get it and they can process the information, understand what they're doing, it's a perfect target audience. But as we evolve and as the brand grows, it's typical in marketing, right? You start with your most, viable customer and who's going to be the quickest to onboard and the quickest to understand. But as you go more mainstream and you go broader and you expand your brand and expand your business, that also grows. With that comes challenges, right? On how you get people to understand this concept. But if I was to say like core target audience, it's there. When I look at our top markets, for example, it's always UAE, Saudi, Kuwait, but then also the UK and the US and Canada are really big markets for us. But I think that's also, the UK especially is representative. There's a lot of UK nationals also living in the UAE.
Yeah, very interesting. And in this whole process, what have you learned are the most common misconceptions or myths around investing in digital property?
I think the misconceptions probably come down to like the regulation. I think a lot of people don't really understand what it means to be a regulated entity. There is a huge amount of financial reporting, due diligence we have to go through to be able to make sure we bring a safe product to market. And I think there is a lot of, maybe not misunderstanding, but I think people don't really understand what that means to be a regulated entity and how much that protects investors. Because there's a lot of cowboys out there like trying to build products and trying to do things, but like regulation is gold standard. And I think that protects investors because we have to operate in a very certain way. Like I say, every single SPV, every single, business has separate bank accounts. That protects investors. And there's so many reasons behind that. So I think the regulation would be the biggest one.
What do you think wasn't in the manual when it came to explaining complex fintech and proptech ideas in a most human way possible? So what Senia asked, like when you're delivering to your audiences, what do you think that you didn't really know before and you had to discover yourself when you're communicating to your audience?
I think the biggest challenge is, as I said, creating a category. Creating a brand new category is such a challenge. It's amazing because you have so much space to play. When competition is low, it's glorious because you are innovating, you're throwing stuff out, seeing what sticks. But distilling messages, like the one craft I've definitely learned is how to distill a really, really complex problem and product and really focus on what that solution and what that benefit is for people and communicating that and synthesizing that. And that's not easy. And that's a craft that continues. And I think that there's a lot of, now, especially with AI and GPT, there's so much copycat and content and people just churn stuff out. But the art of crafting messaging is so profound and has such an impact. But I think it's always a journey and it's always a learning. But I think creating a new category and distilling it in the right way is without a doubt something I've had to learn.
So you would say that you were literally, because I don't think there's anything to go off of when it came to speaking to your audience. So you had to just curate it based on maybe investments and
a lot of research, speaking to our audience, asking them, how does Stake make you feel? What does the brand do for you? What does this deliver to you? Like really going to the depths of like user surveys, face-to-face interviews, qualitative, quantitative data. And we're redoing it now, right? Because competitors have all come to the market, copied a lot of our messaging. We all sound the same, starting to look the same. All right, how do we change this? And how do we become, market leaders and really solidify that positioning? And how do we do a complete overhaul of our messaging? Because I don't want to feel and sound like the other brands. I want us to stand out and I want us to feel different and elevated. That's why it's always a journey. It's understanding your users, understanding the competition and not focusing too much on competition, but just having an eye on what they're doing because sometimes they have deeper pockets and you have to be cautious on like what message they're hitting people with and how you position yourselves to stand out at the same time.
One last question before we dive into more investing bit is, if I am someone who has never really invested, and how would you convince me that Stake is the right way to go forward?
I would say before you've never even invested, I say to anybody, don't invest till you have an emergency fund. You need something solid.
This is money I'm ready to lose.
You're ready
so
to...
I always invest money I'm ready to lose. I'll tell you why. It's so interesting when you were saying we only target people who are buying ETFs, who are buying bonds, and who know what they're doing. I have all of them. I don't know what I'm doing. I have all of them.
But I think you tend to have principles, though.
Yes, of course.
You have principles of like long-term investment.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And I know I cannot cash half of them out right now, so I get that. So aside from emergency fund, I think that's a classic. So let's say I want to get into it because the way I do it, and I don't think a lot of people do it, I think I'm a bit like, I have girl math issues. Like I just follow that in investing as well. But I just download apps and I'm a doer. I learn through triggers and alerts and like graphs and stuff like that. What would be your advice when it comes to investing in property technology in general?
Yeah.
If somebody's just starting out?
I would say, like, look, at the end of the day, real estate is an asset class. Stocks can go to zero. Real estate doesn't go to zero. Real estate is a solid investment year after year. Richest people in the world have made their money through real estate. Real estate is a shoo-in. Understanding the principles of real estate is very easy. You buy a property, you rent it out, you get income. Having a company to take care of all the nuances is done for you. You don't have to think about that. But if you know real estate is a solid investment, you have the ability to diversify and not throw your money into one. You're already hedging your bets. And then you're in an environment where you need to know long term. You know, you're not going to double your money in real estate overnight. That's not what real estate is about. It's a long-term play. So if you've got money to invest, real estate is a fantastic option. But again, it's not just diversification within real estate, it's diversification across stocks and bonds and making sure your portfolio is managed across all of them.
Yeah. So it's
That's
so
a
interesting.
good answer. Yeah, I love it. Stay with us. One more hour.
So
Go on.
Yeah, you've been around fintech for a while, and I'm curious about your personal investing story. When did you start investing? And I know that there is YouTube video and some pen stock moment involved.
Yeah. So I started investing around COVID time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So about over 5 years ago, I started investing, and just a work colleague had started getting into it, started talking to me about it, didn't understand anything, but I knew I didn't have a pension in Dubai. So I knew I had to do something. And again, surrounding myself with people that invest and surrounding myself with mentors that talk about these things, it has me thinking, well, they're in the position I want to be in, so I better start doing that. I, for a couple of months, spent hours on YouTube watching every video, understanding how investing works, what are the best apps, what are fees, what kind of thing I should invest in. Should I go singular stock? Should I go ETF? Like, gosh, I fell down an absolute rabbit hole. I started investing in global diversified index. I then started having fun, and I started going to penny stocks. One penny stock in particular, I put in, I'll never forget it. I think I put in like $1,000 maybe. And there's an app called StockTwits, okay? And it's like Twitter for stocks, and you can follow the specific stock, and everyone's talking about it. People are slating it, people are ramming it up like this. It's almost like the height of GameStop of every stock on the market. I was obsessed. I'd be on it every night. And I think I threw, something like maybe like $1,000 or $2,000, maybe a bit more, roughly, into this penny stock because everyone was talking about it. Within less than weeks, I'm going to say it was like $2,500. It was at $30,000 within weeks. And I remember my older brother saying to me, he's a Forex currency trader. He understands how to trade. He was like, sell that now. Sell that stock. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I figured it out. I know, I've cracked the code on investing. I know everything. Like, don't tell me to sell it. He's like, I'm telling you need to sell it. Within days, gone. I still have it in my account now. I think it's probably worth like a penny. But if anything, it was the best lesson I could have had because I know how to read graphs. I know how to understand graphs. But ego gets the better of you, especially like penny stocks. And I invested in a bunch more that have all dropped. And I was in the hype era of retail investors post-COVID. And I just learned that slow and steady wins the way. Slow and steady wins the race. It's really diversifying, long-term investments, not getting too caught up. It consumes your life as well. Like I was so every night it was like anxiety. I need to buy this, sell this. Like I don't want to be a professional trader. I have no ambition to. Like, I just want my money to work for me. So I stepped away from penny stocks, and now I just have a very calm portfolio. I don't even really look. I throw my money in every month, and yeah, it's done very well.
Do you have a percentage that you invest every month?
I don't know about percentage.
You just invest what makes sense.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you what the percentage is. Like, I'm pretty good. Like, I have my emergency fund. I'm very good at like where I keep my money. Like,
Good,
I have like my emergency fund in one account on an interest only. I have another account for like my spending. I have another account for my like investments, and my investments are probably, I don't know, maybe like 30 to 40%. I save and invest every month. Yeah.
That's so funny. When I started investing, actually, I would be checking the app every day, but I didn't invest in anything like, risky. I was investing in big companies, but still I was checking the app every day, expecting that something would change,
immediately. At least it doesn't fall immediately as well, so it's a good thing. Yeah.
You didn't have $32,000 then lose it within hours. So.
It wasn't your money. So it's
no,
okay.
I know.
But it still hurts.
It was a good lesson.
Yeah,
good lesson.
It still hurts. It happened to my brother in crypto.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to like take it out. He had almost, I think, 100,000 and he lost it all. He just waited too long.
Yeah.
And I think after that, he spent like 2 years trading in and out. He knew so much about it. He would teach his friends in it. They all made money, and he lost out. He's like, I'm never going again. Because I'm just not meant for it. It's just not my luck anymore.
Yeah.
So he's not investing right now, isn't he?
Not in crypto, no.
Not in crypto.
Not in crypto. He stays away from them.
Okay, but I think the most difficult is to start, to be honest, because you don't know how to start, right? And do you need to watch some videos? And
so
some videos might be so
overwhelming.
complicated. What advice can you give to someone who want to start investing?
I would say stay clear of any particular stock. I would say, let's talk on the stock side. You need to think about your jurisdiction. You need to think about where you live, where you reside, and when you want to retire. If you have a rough idea of that, that's a good place to start. But I would say go global. You can do US, S&P focused, and just start investing on a good platform that doesn't charge you too much. You do not need to know the ins and outs. Everyone does it. It's a great way to make money. It's a great way to make money over time. You just have to do it with the assumption that it's a long-term play. Open a basic compound calculator on Google. Put in your average monthly amount. The average return of like a global index is 8%, S&P maybe 10, 12%. You can see the difference if you keep your money in a bank account and if you see your money invested, and you can just see the difference in it compounding. If that doesn't sell you, I can't sell you. If a basic compound calculator cannot tell you, if you keep doing what you're doing and you keep it in a savings account, how much money you will have in 30 years versus putting it into work and your money to work, then yeah.
Yeah, and this is interesting that you said about how much fee they're charging. I didn't know about this, that not all apps don't necessarily have a fee, or like some apps have overnight fees.
Yeah, some charge quite a bit. Also withdrawals.
Exactly. There are some that are purely meant for day trading.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to do your research there.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to create material on like just basic education. Something would be cool. Maybe we'll attach it to, after the episode. But yeah, no, I think it's so challenging. So much so that I feel like there have been books to simplify the language. Because anytime I speak to a guy friend who's in trading, they'll throw all the jargons there that exists. And this one friend of mine, he just opened up a website and he's like, oh yeah, just go here and you just sign up and you get $500 and then you trade. I'm like, what do you mean I get $500? I don't understand what you're saying. Everybody throws jargons and nobody says how to start. So I think what your advice is good.
Yeah, I think as well, like I don't spend too much time thinking about it now. I've done my research, I've done my homework.
Yeah.
That might fluctuate, and gosh, the market this year has gone down quite a bit. I just throw more money in because it's going down, you're buying cheap. Because I've done my homework, I know I'm invested in that for a reason, and I trust the decision that I made. I don't worry about the peaks and the troughs, but when it dips, I'll just throw a bit more in because I've done my research, I've done my homework, and I don't need to spend my time like researching the next best thing. I've bought a bit of crypto. I think it's good to have some crypto. I think the NASDAQ is going to do well. I might start thinking about the NASDAQ with AI companies, but honestly, just do your homework, lock yourself in and just commit.
Do you still look at the market every now and then? No?
Hardly.
Do you trade gold? on stocks? No.
It's not really, gold isn't much of a thing in the UK, so I've never bought gold. I mean, I wear so much gold. It's on me, my gold investments.
Because it's quite a topic in my culture.
Yeah.
Because we buy gold, like our mothers.
Very big.
So I think that's another topic we're going to be discussing tomorrow as well. But okay, that's interesting. Yes. Yeah. The research itself gets overwhelming, I suppose.
You just need to start.
That's
what I did, to be honest, because...
Google Beginner's Guide to Investing. There will be something on YouTube that is the most basic explainer of like what you need to know.
Yeah, so far everything I've invested in crypto and bonds and stocks is, I understand that bit, but there are so many other things that I guess I need to get into slowly. Yeah. Gradually. Just trying to learn how to...
Sounds like you're pretty diversified already. Do you need to do more? Like, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying, I guess.
Okay. Sarah, I also know that you're doing your own podcast. What it is about?
Yes, I've done season 1 of She Builds. I think everyone has different reasons for starting podcasts. I was in an environment, in a high growth environment, and where I was doing a lot of things for the first time, and I didn't understand exactly how I was going to do it all. And any time I had the opportunity to meet someone who'd been in a similar scenario, I'd sit them down and I'd grill them. And I would, do you have these problems? Are you doing this? How are you managing your team? How are you scaling this? How are you building this? Like, I just had a million questions. And I just wanted to find people that had done a similar thing and been in a similar trajectory, just to ask them a bunch of questions. So that's what I did. And I decided to do it on women because I'm very fortunate. I get asked to speak at a lot of events and panels and etc. But it always annoys me when I get invited to speak at an event and they put the male panel at 11 a.m. in the prime slot and they put the women in a 3 p.m. graveyard slot all together on a women in leadership panel. And I'm like, bring us into the conversation. We don't want to speak about being women. I want to speak about business. I want to speak about what I would know. So I thought, sod it, I'm going to combine women, and I'm not going to speak to them about being a woman or a woman in leadership. I'm going to speak to them about their domain knowledge, what they know, and ask them all the questions I want to ask. And it was a great process. I think I learned loads through it. Incredibly hard, like way harder, more time intensive than I ever imagined, especially when I don't even have a 9-to-5 job right now. I have like a 9-to-9 job. And I don't know like what will come with it. I don't know if I'll do it. I'm very candid. I don't know if I'll have a season 2. Like I've loved it. I've learned loads. It might come, it might not, it might change. And I think I'm quite open with that discovery. I think sometimes we do these things and we get so caught up and tied into like, I have to do it, I have to commit. But I think like stopping and being like, do I enjoy this? Is this actually something I want to do? Or am I doing it because everyone else thinks I should be doing it? And I think for me, I think I learned a lot and I enjoyed the process, but I'm still figuring out if and what maybe another season looks like. So yeah, that's She Builds. And I've loved it. It's been a bit of a passion project. I think I have so much admiration for people like you doing it, like serious admiration. Like I wish I had someone to do it with, because doing it on your own is so tough. Figuring it out, like a podcast is not easy at all. I think we see these 60-second snips online and you think, oh, I'll start a podcast. And then you get into it and you're like...
Yeah, and most of us are doing it with day jobs and other things that we need to get through. You said that you learned a lot. Is there anything that stood out for you when you were interviewing these women in leadership?
Yeah, I think if anything, like there's a lot of problems that are very shared, especially in the tech space. And I think it really helped me understand how transferable every single problem I have is just the same, dressed up in a different way at every other company with every other person. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate industry knowledge and we overcomplicate, oh, you're in this particular industry. But problems are problems. And if you have a problem, solving problem attitude, that transcends across multiple industries. So I think for me, it was just really a realization that everyone's facing the most similar problems, very different companies, but the way to solve them are, again, very similar. There's only so many tools in the toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And you think this was, I don't know, is this leadership problems or is it female and leadership problems?
Leadership,
There's
not much difference between males and females when it comes to the world of work. I think females bring a fantastic energy that I think more males could embody. Yeah. I think women are brilliant. I would love to see more females in leadership positions. I really would. And I think we're getting there, right? Like we've just got this period where women weren't focusing on their careers as much or given the opportunities. So you've got a lack of them in leadership right now. Like you even look in like the UK, US, women on boards, there's a real cry out for women to be on board positions and leadership positions because there's just not that talent. But it's coming through the ranks. Like I think we're in a very good place now with like women being part of the conversation. I would just love to feel that shift sometimes between talking about being a woman and just talking about business topics with a woman. And I think that's what we're still figuring out. And look, like, it's important to have these conversations and speak to women about being women, but gosh, just talk to me about business. I can have a really good conversation with you 100%. About business. Yeah.
So the reason why we said woman is because the podcast premise is she leads. But in that case, what's something you think that everyone in leadership should unlearn before they try to lead, not just women?
If you're becoming a leader, you have to unlearn every communication skill and relearn every communication skill. And you have to learn how to communicate online very well. I think there's a lot of people that can communicate really well as a IC contributor. But the minute you lead and the minute you've got a team and you're on a ship and you're the captain of that ship, you've got to communicate in a very different way, in a very different format, online, offline. And you've got to be able to do that very, very well. That is an art. It is an actual art. And I criticize myself as a leader every day. And I rushed that too much. Like, I shouldn't have sent that. I should have communicated this in a different way. Oh, I missed that one-on-one. I need to keep that one-on-one up. Leadership is an art and it needs time. But it needs the right environment for you to become the best leader. So I'd say you have to unlearn how you've communicated and relearn how to communicate, because you've got to steer that ship and you've got to breed the best of your people. And I think that only comes from knowing what each individual person wants. What do they want out of what they're doing? What do they want to achieve? How do you give them those opportunities? How do you give them the time of day? How do you, like, my job is removing bottlenecks and removing problems for people and making the ship still move. And I think you need to have the time and understanding of that. And that is a skill that I think very few have mastered. I still haven't mastered it myself, but having the self-awareness and understanding of like how to lead is incredibly important.
Yeah, I can imagine. So is that what you'd say you've done in your current role and previous roles? Is that what you seek out? You understand your team and then you navigate how to respond. But how do you really communicate in like for the wider team? How do you prepare for something like this? Because I think some of the leaders, they lead the way they think they want it to be led instead of their like what the people want or what their staff wants.
Yeah.
So how do you like break it up where I imagine that you get to know your team if it's a smaller company? How do you do it when you're in like a bigger company?
Yeah. I think the hardest part is having teams not just next to you and having teams internationally and having to manage them. And I think that's a challenge in itself, right? I think though, like being very candid, I'm very candid with my team. I'm saying, guys, I'm open for feedback. Tell me, I cannot change, and the structure of this team and the business cannot change unless we get feedback. And I think like you have to open that door and be open to feedback. But it's one thing saying it and one thing making your team feel comfortable enough to voice it. I feel very lucky that my team will voice it to me, which tells me I'm creating a good culture. If your team are not giving you critical feedback, you're doing something quite wrong because you're not perfect. And I still am 100% sure my team are not telling me everything. I'm very sure there's things I can do a lot better. And, you know, as a leader, you have to really filter the pressure. You know, there's so much pressure coming down on you, especially from founders. You have to hold that pressure and not let it seep through to your team. But I'm very aware that pressure seeps through to my team sometimes. I try as hard not to. But in a high growth startup environment, that happens. But I'm also honest with my team about that. At the end of the day, we're all humans. We're not in the job forever. We all need to find the best way to work together and be very candid about that. And I think it's just being very honest with your team and opening that door of communication and allowing that feedback to come through. And you're never going to capture it all. You can't please everybody. But all you can do is be open to change and open to listening.
Yeah, and I like what you said that you still haven't mastered it because you can't. You need to keep learning and keep changing and keep improving. What do you feel about this, Sanya? I mean, now you're in a much bigger role, a leadership role. How do you navigate this?
The leadership.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that I became manager maybe around 7-8 years ago. I really like it, to be honest, because you work with people and you keep learning and like you teach other people, but at the same time they teach you. So I like this role, to be honest, because in my opinion, it's very interesting and it's very beneficial.
Yeah. Fair. No, I understand. And I feel like leadership has to be people-centric, in my opinion. And what you said, we're not going to be in the same company, is my favorite line. Because I was literally talking to one of my teammates. I'm like, she's like, oh, she said something to me. I'm like, this is not unique. I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary. This is my job. And I want you to remember this will be your job for anyone who's under you. And you need to take care of them, because your employee will leave the company and like they'll forget about the work, but they'll never forget you. You know, this is the best we can do in this capitalistic world. Just be kind to people. And what you said about being super honest and transparent, even if the pressure is coming down, and allowing them to know that, okay, this is why you said something or did something. And creating that space is so, so important. I think people get stuck in the title and they don't move from it. So yeah, I love that. I really do love that.
And I also think, like, for me especially, I think about like what I've built, and I'm like, wow, we've pretty much 6x the company in such a short space of time. But when I look at, like, one of my girls left recently, and the person she walked in at, 2 years later, the person she left at, I have so much pride. And I said to her, like, we're very honest about it, and she knows it. And I'm like, what a feeling, because I know my mentors that have had that impact on me. And I'm like, what an amazing feeling that I've been able to do that for somebody else and create that space and environment for her to walk in as one person, and 2 years later walk into an incredible opportunity of growth and realization of like what she can achieve. Like, yeah, it's fulfilling.
Yeah, not to be too negative about like the working space and stuff, but I think that's what's gonna last when we're 50 and 60. The impact on people. This is my opinion. My true opinion is your jobs, everything is gonna end. When you are 50, when you're 60, I don't know, you're sipping and retired somewhere. You just, and you never know, you'll cross paths with this person again. They'll know you treated them right and you took care of them, or at least know that you tried. I think for me, that's important, like personally. And I feel like when some sort of empathy comes into play in leadership, it changes everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we are ready to go to the last section. Do you want to take it?
Yeah. Sarah, thank you very much, because I really love your story. I've learned so much, to be honest, today during this 1 hour about finance, about your attitude to life, about leadership and whatnot. It was really very inspiring and very interesting. And just to summarize our conversation, is there anything you wish someone told you when you were younger, something that wasn't in the manual?
Ooh. What do I wish someone told me when I was younger? I'm going to be honest. I think the only thing I can say is watch out how much you give to your job. Watch out how much you give to your career. I really feel like I have lived a wonderful life already, and I've really had a lust for life, and I've lived life, and I've traveled so much and spent so much time with loved ones, and I've built a great career. But sometimes that balance really does flip. And I think you sometimes have to catch yourself thinking, what do I want? What do I actually want out of life? And what kind of life do I want to build for myself? And it's so easy to get on that ladder and just keep climbing and keep going and keep going. And I think you do sometimes have to just pause and think, right, like, where am I out of balance? I have no regrets at all. I've loved my life. I've loved my career. I've loved how much I've learned and grown. But I think if I could like go back to 21-year-old Sarah moving to Dubai for the first time, I think I'd probably pat her on the shoulder and I'd say to her, like, just watch how much you give to your career.
And I'm sure she wouldn't have listened.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. God, no. She laughed at me.
I remember when I was hustling through as well in my early 20s, and someone was like, yeah, just like, take it easy, like just focus here and focus on your studies. I'm like, okay, I did my studies, like whatever. I'm going to still keep hustling. So it comes with time and experience.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Like I said, I have no regrets. There's nothing I'd say like, oh, change this, do this differently. Like, you're going to be fine.
I think the takeaway from your point would be that it all ends.
Yeah.
So don't put so much of your heart in it is what I'll say.
Yeah.
It's so sad. That's what it says. It's so sad. No, but in a good way. In a good way. Enjoy the process and know that your goal should always be about you and not reaching just a title.
Yeah.
It has to be, what are you trying to seek from it?
I think it's a really challenging thing to step away from titles, to step away from external validation, and to step into a place of like really thinking about yourself and going inward. And I think that that's something I'm literally mastering now. And I think that we are very prone to like getting satisfaction, getting feedback, and getting, like I say, validation of all of these external sources. But ultimately, like, what really like fills your cup? What makes you happy?
Actually, yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe you're right, because I've had this conversation with someone else and they're like, yeah, this is what I want. I'm like, actually, I'm no one to tell you that. I think if you want to go to a fast-paced tech, then do it.
Yeah.
I also think that there might be different periods of your life. Sometimes you want to pursue the career. Sometimes you want to focus on your life more. So it like depends on your goals, and you can balance it.
And if you don't do it, you'll be like, I wish I did it. You know? So I think you just have to go through it.
Lean into it. Go through it.
Lean into it. That's it. I love that. Thank you so much, Sarah. We loved having you.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have you again because we have a lot more to discuss. All right, amazing.